I've spent the past 100 years trying to escape from Utopia. Now I am terrified of death. You aren't supposed to be here, a voice said, jolting me back to consciousness. I groaned as I opened my eyes, blinded by an impossibly bright light. Everything around me shined in a mixture of gold and silver, but I couldn't for the life of me figure out the source. As my eyes slowly adapted, I saw a woman leaning against a wall. Next to me, we were on top of a building, thousands of feet up in the air, far above the clouds. I'd chosen to die. I remembered that much, but nothing had made sense about my last day on Earth. I wanted so desperately to stay behind and take care of my family, to be like my grandfather, to make him proud. Yet, I couldn't find the strength to deny Lucifer his horrific deal. I died, didn't I? No shit, you died. You took the deal. Just like all the other men Lucifer speaks to. She sighed. The light that had blinded me a minute ago started to give way to the magnificent colors enveloping the horizon, so endlessly far off into the distance. It was beautiful. Wow, I gasped. Don't let it fool you. It's not what it looks like. Her casual demeanor broke my attention away from the view. I looked over and saw that she looked sad, as if she'd lost her purpose in the vast city of Utopia. Who are you? Link. Without answering the question, she put a finger to her lips, gesturing for me to keep quiet. Then she put a hand on my shoulder. I want you to see this place for what it truly is, but first you need to listen. She had a strange aura surrounding her, ageless and ancient, all at the same time. She wasn't human. I knew that much, and even through the sadness, I could see a charming, but authoritative person. Like with Lucifer, I felt compelled to follow whatever she said. Then I heard the thumps, rhythmic, pulsating sounds beneath the ground. They shook through the metal buildings, shaking their very foundation. And though it was faint, I could feel each and every pulse. She looked at me and smiled, not one of happiness, but one filled with pity. Through her, the veil of lies had been lifted, and the Silver City showed itself for what it truly was. The buildings were tired and made from concrete, with organic streets below made from flesh. Thousands of tired people marching through, all heading in the same direction, guided by disgusting, yet powerful creatures. This isn't a city, Mark, and it sure as hell isn't Utopia. I looked at her in shock, a feeling of panic and guilt surging through my body. And as soon as reality had revealed itself to me, the Silver City returned once more, shining bright in all its glory. You work with Lucifer, don't you? I asked, the question sounding more like an accusation than a simple inquiry. She nodded. Then why are you telling me this? Why not let me be fooled by whatever the duck this is supposed to be? Because I need your help. Mark, unlike the other people wandering this hellscape, you still haven't lost yourself. You still have a chance to be reunited with your family, she explained. Another worldly being stood before me, asking for help. Me, a pitiful excuse of a human being. I couldn't even handle my own life. Yet this creature, more powerful than any human, needed my help. How? Why me? Was all I could ask. There's a place at the city center, they call it the Dome. Only humans can enter. As for why I need you, instead of literally anyone else, Mark, it's because you're all I've got. Can't you just take me there? No. You have to walk the path yourself. I am really sorry, Mark, but this won't be pleasant. I was taken aback by her statement. The Utopia I'd been promised wasn't supposed to be a nightmare. It was supposed to be a place full of purpose, hope. It was my destiny, but I don't know the way. Please, just take me there, I begged. Just follow the horde of people. They're all going the same way. Before I could ask any further questions, she'd vanished. Just that she worked with Lucifer, which on its own should have been a deterrent. Yet, I somehow trusted her. I made my way down to the street. The roads were covered in silver, brilliantly reflecting the golden light that appeared from a sunless sky. It was a beautiful sight, but I couldn't enjoy it. I'd seen a glimpse of the real Utopia. Even the illusion wouldn't distract me from the ever-present thumping. The people around me were tired, all marching the same way, but none of them walking together. It was clear they hadn't been human for a long time, that they'd lost themselves along the way. Now nothing more than soulless husks desperate for the promised salvation. But in my heart, I knew it would never come. I wondered if they'd all taken Lucifer's deal, or if they'd been snatched out from the empty eternity that came following death. Years passed as we walked towards the center of the city, and by each passing day the people around me grew thinner, turning into emaciated figures that shouldn't even be able to carry their own bodies. Some of us collapsed on the way. I tried to help them, but upon staring into their empty eyes, I knew they'd be better off on wayside, alone, waiting to be washed away by the unstoppable march of time. It's a weird sensation, time despite it being infinite, and even with the absence of day, night, hunger, thirst, I still counted the minutes. A part of me still connected to my basic human instincts. No time had passed, yet it had been 100 years. An endless journey towards the dome. On the way we were being watched by grotesque creatures. One of the wanderers referred to them as angels, saying they'd keep us safe. It was an obvious, deluded lie, but I couldn't find it in my heart to tell them the truth. One of the angels would rip one of the wanderers apart, letting their guts pile out onto the spotless silver. They laughed as they tossed the corpses around, but in Utopia nothing could truly die. I just hoped they were too far gone to feel the torture. I kept mostly to myself. I didn't want to interact with my blind, ignorant companions. They truly believed they'd found salvation, or that at the very least, they would discover it around the next corner. But me, I saw no hope, no light at the end of the tunnel. All I had was a singular, overpowering feeling of regret. Regret that I'd took the deal. Regret that I'd failed my grandfather. And regret that I'd left everyone I loved behind. I spent years inspecting my fellow wanderers, each of them dragging their feet along the silver streets. The further we got, the less it seemed like they were actually walking. It looked almost like they were being dragged, pulled by an unseen force, something just beyond the reach of comprehension. That's what truly shattered my illusion of the so-called utopia. The vision of the broken city returned to me once more. The concrete buildings, the flesh-covered streets, thousands, millions of tendrils emerging from the ground, each attached to one of the inhabitants of Utopia, digging into their chests and sucking out what little life force they had left. It dawned on me that the people weren't living off the fruits of Utopia, but that the city was feeding upon its people. We were the food. I looked down at my own chest. No tendril attached. I hadn't yet been taken by the city. I wasn't a part of the farm that kept it alive, but soon I would be, unless I get to the dome in time. I tried to free some of the people, attempting to rip away the tendrils. But for each pull, it simply dug deeper into their chests. They screamed in agony, not even realizing where the pain came from. And on the rare occasion that a tendril detached from the involuntary symbiosis, the hole it left behind allowed the lungs to simply pour of them like sick, deflated balloons. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't help them. 100 years passed, or just second for all I knew, and I kept walking with my herd of people. I still felt human, a part of me still connected to the life I led back on Earth, but it was slowly fading, and I'd soon turn into one of the empty husks. Eventually, the brilliant skyline of buildings ended, and we entered what they called the plains of Utopia. I wish I could have seen the beautiful sight they claimed it to be, endless pastures of green grass and incredible animals, but instead, I only saw the flesh, the tendrils, and the guards that kept herding us towards certain annihilation. The plains were unforgiving, and was the place where most of my companions fell to starvation. They could only feed the city for so long, before even their bones gave out, no longer able to carry their wasted frame. The saddest part was that they still didn't realize their certain doom. They still believed in salvation. Then I saw the dome. In the midst of the wasteland of rotten flesh, lay a magnificent, obsidian, half-sphere, spanning so far up into the sky that it towered above the buildings that surrounded it. Not a single imperfection on its black surface. Despite the sight, we'd have to walk another year to reach the border of the new city, the center that housed the dome. I found a man sitting in the outskirts, writing a letter. He told me he wanted to say goodbye to his son before he took the next step and entered. He seemed different from the others, a hint of his former self still remaining within his tired body. I kept him company while he wrote the letter, and he told me the heartbreaking story of how he'd lost both his wife and himself in the nightmares of Utopia. My wife, she's inside the D-Dome. I am certain of it. He kept repeating as we spoke. Once he finished the letter, it simply vanished from his hands, hopefully reaching his son back on Earth. He walked with me towards the dome itself. As we reached the walls, he stretched out his hands and touched the obsidian. No sooner had he made contact with it, before he started to merge seamlessly with the walls of the dome. And within a few seconds, it had completely consumed him. Thousands of people around did the same, all of them quickly eaten up by the darkness, with tears of joy and indescribable ecstasy. Yet, I could see their bodies crush beneath the pressure, and hear their happiness turn to sick gargles as they vanished within the obsidian. Not as inviting as you thought. Huh. I turned around, and saw the same woman that had greeted me upon arrival at Utopia, so many years ago. Unlike the rest of its inhabitants, she hadn't changed in the slightest. Still elegant, still beautiful. Where the duck have you been? I've been walking for a ducking century. She looked at me without answering, immediately prompting me to calm down. It has been 2 weeks. Mark, your funeral, that was yesterday, she said, matter-of-factly. What? How? Time passes differently here. 100 years is what you needed to accept the reality of this place. So that's what you got. But that doesn't mean anything about time on Earth. Why didn't you tell me? Why let me suffer? She ignored my question. Did you know that it never rains here? she said casually. What the actual duck does that have to do with anything? I yelled. I always liked rain. She continued, trickling down. Unstoppable rain. Given enough time it could wash away entire cities, carve paths through mountains, shape the earth. It gives life to nature, and it sustains all breathing beings. It could even wash away all memories of the past, giving us all a fresh start. Yet, people despise it, and I never understood that. Why stop change? She directed her attention towards the obsidian wall and touched it. I reached out reflectively to stop her, but it didn't swallow her. She leaned against it, and nothing happened. I need you to get me inside. Mark. Why? So I can destroy this place. Lucifer says he's gathering enough people to rebel against God, but he never said what he'll do with the people he gathered. Did he? No. She shook her head in disappointment, and without explaining any further, she grabbed my hand and pushed me towards the wall. It immediately started enveloping around us, liquid darkness covering my face, asphyxiating and blinding me. I wanted to cry out for help, but with the liquid filling my lungs, I could do nothing but struggle hopelessly as the wall consumed us. Thank you, was all I heard before I finally passed out. I awoke in the middle of the street, jumping to my feet as a car sped by, almost driving over me. It honked its horn as it passed, probably thinking I was just some drunk that had passed out. The woman, whoever she was, had brought me back to life. I was on my own street, and without hesitation, I started running towards my house. I hammered on the door, no concept of how much time had passed since my last visit. The door opened, and I was greeted by my wife, Hannah. She looked distraught. Sorry, can you help you? She asked, bags under her eyes and smeared makeup. Hannah, it's me, Mark. I came back. I shouted joyfully. Excuse me, I don't know what happened exactly, but I am alive. Hannah, I continued. She looked at me in a mixture of sadness and disgust. Is this some kind of sick joke? I just buried my husband 2 days ago. Who put you up to this? No. Yes, I did die. Get the hell away from me, you sick bastard. Leave me alone. She yelled back as she shut the door in my face. I looked in through one of the windows to see her storm off, and in the reflection I saw a man I couldn't recognize. I stumbled back in shock, checking myself to see what had changed. Everything seemed so unfamiliar. I dug through my pockets to look for house keys, or a phone, but all I could find was a piece of paper, a letter. Mark, I am inside the dome. Don't worry, I'll take it from here. You might already know yourself as a stranger. Whatever life you once led has passed, and despite your most valiant efforts, no one will ever recognize you as Mark Shepard. I am sorry, but it's the only way to keep Lucifer from taking you back here. Enjoy the time you've been given. Find whatever meaning that still exists on Earth. The creature that is Utopia is about to awaken, and unless I am able to destroy it once and for all, it's coming for Earth next.